This is Craig with the Yard to Table Creations, and we're going to talk a little bit about multi-grafted trees. I know these are popular. We get, the citrus salad trees, stone fruits, cherries. There's lots you can multi-graft. I am of the opinion, however, and it's sometimes an unpopular opinion, that I'm not a big fan of multi-grafted trees, and I'm going to show you exactly why right now. In my experience, almost 15 years of gardening and tree pruning, I've always seen the same thing happen with multi-grafted trees, and you can see what's going on here. We've touched on this before, but when you have a multi-grafted tree, everything starts out nice and even, right? We have the same size grafts, all on the same rootstock. But over the years, what's going to happen is you're always going to get one dominant graft, and that dominant graft is going to suck up all the resources for the rest of the grafts. And what you're going to end up with here that you can see is you have this graft, which is an apricot, which is a really vigorous grower, is clearly larger than the nectarine here, than the peach graft here. If I'm not mistaken, I think we've already lost one graft off of this tree. As this gets bigger and bigger and more dominant, it's going to use more and more resources that the tree has available to it, leaving less and less resources for the other grafts on the tree. And over the course of 5 years or so, that one dominant graft is going to be your tree. So oftentimes you'll see this with citrus trees as well, and it gets a little more complicated with citrus trees because citrus trees flower at actually different times of the year. For example, some of your tangerines will flower very early in the season, late spring, early summer, whereas some of your orange varieties will flower much later in the summer, sometimes not until June or July. And then you have your lemons and your limes, which seem to kind of vary up and down with their flowering, but they kind of flower all year round almost, which means that they need water at different times. And if you're trying to water one tree with multiple grafts that need different watering schedules, that's going to be pretty tough. And you're going to end up with the same effect, whether it's a citrus tree, stone fruit, or any kind of multi-grafted tree. You're going to end up with one that is going to take over the tree. So in my opinion, I would say instead of going with a multi-grafted tree, as fun as it is to do, if you're looking for fruit production, you want to keep your trees separate. That said, if you're working in a very, very tiny area and you just don't have room for 4 or 5 fruit trees, that might be a time to try multi-grafting. And really at that point, you're going to want to try and keep whatever dominant graft is on that tree as short as possible for as long as possible so that the resources are equally spread between the grafts. Before we go, I just wanted to give a perfect example of what I was explaining earlier in the video about trees flowering at different times and needing different resources at different times. We have a multi-grafted apple here, and you can see on this graft here we've got fruit really well set. This fruit's actually pretty close to being ready to go. And then over here on this graft, we are just getting to flowering. Now we are in early June. So these are the Anna apples that have set pretty early, which is what they're designed to do. Over here, we have a Fuji. A lot of people will do this with apples in particular because apples like Fuji need a pollinator. But in this case, it's also way behind the other graft of the tree. So right now, this graft with all the apples on it is taking up a vast majority of the resources, which is not going to allow this graft to flower as well as it could if it were on its own. Right, so that's a little lesson on multi-grafted trees. If anybody has any questions, leave us our questions in the comments below, and we will see you in the next one.